Welcome to Stay Young. I'm honored to welcome one of the most famous scientists in the field of healthy longevity research and development, the professor of genetics at Harvard Medical School, David Sinclair. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. It's great to be here.
So you are 55. I may mention that because you have talked openly in several interviews about your age. 55. That says your passport, but how old are your cells? How old is your metabolism? What is your biological age?
Well, I was just at a conference at Harvard where I work, and the conference was about biomarkers measuring aging. And there were at least 55 different ways to measure my age. And so there are a few ways to measure it. Generally, I'm about 10 years younger than my current age, depending on how you measure it. But, I try to act as a role model. I'm not really worried about my own health as much as having an impact on everyone else's life. So I try to live a life that can show what's possible. And I think living a life that makes you 10 years younger and perhaps then live 10 years longer is definitely a worthwhile goal. And, my father, who has been probably even better at me at living such a lifestyle, he's 85 now, and he's even healthier than I am at 55. So it's definitely, you can do it, and there are different ways to measure it. And generally, if you look at all of them, yeah, I'm a bit younger than 55.
So you have to explain to us, what are you doing every day to stay so young, and what is your father doing to stay in that great shape?
Yeah, well, how long have we got? There are a few key things that you can do. I get stopped on the street, people asking me this question, so it's one I've heard before. So let's start with the easy things that anybody should be able to do. And these have been said before on your show and elsewhere. It's take care of yourself. Today's lifestyle, most of us have, or at least society puts on us, is the opposite of what we need for longevity. The concept is to put your body in a state of adversity, or at least perceived adversity. Fasting, not eating too much sugar or even too much animal protein. These are abundance modes, abundance signals. And conversely, not eating as often, not eating these great sources of calories and building blocks, puts your body into adversity mode, survival mode, and turns on what we call longevity genes. And so what do I do practically? Well, I do those things. I mean, at least I try. I'm on the road 250, 300 days a year, so it makes it challenging. But for most people who don't travel, get into a routine of not eating 3 meals a day. If you're young and healthy, you don't need 3 big meals. Stay lean and have a body mass in the right range, which is usually around 22 to 25. Because obesity and being overweight, having visceral fat will definitely accelerate aging. Eat the right foods. So there's a big debate about what to eat, not just when to eat. And I've looked at the science. I've listened to my partner, who's a nutritionist and specialist in longevity, Serena Poon. And I've tried various things and measured things. And the one that works the best, and the science makes most sense, is plant focused. I call myself a struggling vegan, which means I mostly eat plants and plant-based foods that are very nutritious and lots of protein, but I occasionally will eat a piece of sushi or a little piece of chicken. But mostly I'm plant-focused, and I grow a lot of our own food here in the kitchen and in the backyard. And I've recently grown an orchard actually to try and help be almost self-sustaining and get fresh food. Now, you don't always have access to an orchard. It's a little orchard, but you can grow food in your kitchen, right? It's not that hard. For $100 US, you can get a little box that has lights, and I have 3 of those in the kitchen, and I grow tomatoes and vegetables and those things. So that's what to eat, when to eat. I don't drink alcohol. I've never smoked. These are the key things. I avoid a lot of UV light. That'll make you look old, at least. And then I do supplementation with things which we can get into, which is a longer discussion. I take a few medicines that are thought to slow and even reverse aging. Exercise is important. You got to move. Obviously, you can't sit around all day in front of a desk. I'm usually at a standing desk when I'm at Harvard. I'm traveling now, but this is actually a standing desk I'm at right now. I go for walks. I lose my breath at least once every couple of days. It's even better if you do it every day. You know, either running or something that'll get me panting for at least 5 to 10 minutes. It's better if you go longer, but I typically don't have a lot of time, but I do try to squeeze it in, and lift weights. You know, anybody, especially men, but also females who could do yoga as well. We need to maintain our muscle mass, especially after middle age, where we lose muscle progressively if we don't do anything. And that's even more important if you're fasting or if you're taking one of these weight loss medicines. Those are known to induce not just weight loss, but also muscle loss. So I'll pause there and let you ask some questions. I'm sure there's many more.
And there's one lifestyle factor which has a quite strong influence on your aging, I guess. You work really hard, lots of traveling. That sounds as like a lot of stress, chronic stress. You've said that chronic stress is our biggest killer. So is stress your greatest personal challenge?
It used to be. In my 30s and 40s, I had 3 children at home and about 10 different jobs. I was starting companies, running a lab at Harvard, and traveling. And I tried to balance work and life, and it was very, very, very difficult. In fact, I regret that I wasn't at home more and a better dad to my kids. Now I'm making up for it as best I can, but they're teenagers and in their early 20s. So it was very stressful, very, very stressful. And I would overeat, I would binge, I was drinking alcohol, red wine every night. Not excessively, but 1 or 2 glasses is still now known to shrink the brain, so I don't do that. And what I've done now that's been very important is, and I have to credit my partner, who is not just a nutritionist, but a wellness expert. And she saw that I was going to burn out and taught me how to relax, how to have mindfulness, how to pause during the day and breathe slowly. I learned some meditation. She took me to India a couple of times to learn how to be very mindful and understand how the mind works. And I've been on a journey over the last 3 years of self-improvement. And I really have worked hard not to get worried about things that I cannot affect. And even those things that I can affect that worry me, I don't get stressed. I have a mind now that says, life is short, this will pass, I will do my best and stop worrying about it. And I get a lot more sleep than I used to as well, at least better sleep, if not more. And that's because I'm not worried all the time. And my cortisol levels, which is, as you know, a hormone that results from chronic stress, it's gone way down. And that, I think, is also helping slow down my aging process.
Heart rate variability?
Oh, it's gone up. Heart rate variability is important. That's high. I'd have to look on my phone to see what it is, but it's usually up in the top 5% of the population. And my heart rate is very slow. My resting heart rate is in the high 40s, low 50s, which is what you'd get with an athlete, and I'm definitely not an athlete. So what I'm doing seems to be working in terms of getting my cardiovascular system in order. And I had my cardiovascular system looked at this week, actually, and using carotid Doppler, and it's very healthy. So there's no sign of plaque at all at my age, which is great. And that's surprising because my family has a history of heart disease. My grandmother had a stroke in her 30s, so it's that bad. I have Ashkenazi Jewish genes in my ancestry, and so they're not the greatest. And so I'm very happy that so far this lifestyle of what I eat and the things that I'm doing are protecting me seemingly from heart disease as well.
Role model, congratulations. So now I would like to dive deep Tell us, what is happening at the level of molecular biology? What is happening on your DNA, on its surface during aging?
Well, so the first thing to say is we are scientists, right? I'm a professor, and we're still in the field, a field that's moving rapidly, and things are changing. And we've gone through a few paradigm shifts, major shifts in thinking over the last 30 years. We used to think, let's start with what aging probably isn't. We used to think that aging was just wearing out and damage to DNA, and that was all that was happening. That was in the 1980s. Then in the 1990s, it was telomeres are everything, shortening of telomeres, the ends of chromosomes. It's like a clock, and then you die. The telomere hypothesis is still valid, but it's not the whole answer. There's many other things going on. And then in the 2000s, we discovered, a field, and I was a part of that field, discovered genes that controlled aging. So it became about turning on the survival network, survival genes, and that's still very true. But that doesn't tell you what causes aging. It just tells you how the body protects itself. Then in the 2010s, the rage, and still is to some extent, was the hallmarks of aging. What happened to the field was that there was a paper that published of a pie chart that showed the 9 hallmarks of aging. Now there's about 12. And each cause of aging was given a different slice of that pizza pie. And unfortunately, it stifled innovation in the field. Everyone felt happy. They were part of the process. But there hasn't been a lot of innovation since then. What I think really is going on is that one of those slices is more important than others, and that's epigenetic changes, which means how the cells control which genes to turn on and off. And that's analog information, so it's very hard to keep pristine and in order for your whole lifespan. And so I've written about this in my book, also called Lifespan. And the theory is called the information theory of aging. And what it looks like is that aging, in large part, is the cells losing their identity. Cells lose their information to be young. And the theory suggests that there's a backup copy of that information somewhere that can be reset and allow the cells to be young again. And we're doing a lot of that in my lab now. And a lot of others are doing what we call epigenetic reprogramming to reverse aging. And so that's what I think is going on. And we've done a lot of molecular work. And we think one of the causes of this loss of epigenetic information is broken DNA, double-stranded DNA breaks. So if in my lab, if we cause these breaks in a mouse, we can make the mouse get old rapidly. And it gets all the signs of aging that we can measure. And so I think that's what's going on. Of course, there are lots of other molecular changes that go along with that. Mitochondrial dysfunction, loss of stem cells, loss of the ability to respond to energy. Telomeres are in there. Senescent cells accumulate, inflammation. The list goes on. But what we're trying to do in my lab is to see how many of these hallmarks are actually the downstream, the consequences of epigenetic information loss.
Let's get back to your information theory of aging. How can I imagine this? Your wonderful lifestyle reaches the DNA in each of your cells. How does that work?
Well, let's say you are fasting or on a calorically restricted diet, so you're eating 20% less than the calories that your nutritionist or doctor would recommend. What happens then is a lot of things. One of the things that happens is you'll have lower blood glucose. You're getting less glucose attaching to proteins. It's called glycation. You're also turning on longevity genes, such as sirtuins, which are 7 genes in the body that we work on. And the sirtuins control the body's defenses against aging. They are epigenetic information regulators. Actually, sirtuins stands for silent information regulators, so it's in the name. They protect and stabilize the epigenome. They also repair broken chromosomes, so they do those 2 important jobs. They delay senescence. They improve the body's sensitivity to insulin, so you get better blood glucose levels. They ramp up mitochondria, and they do all these things. There's whole thousands of papers on this topic, but the way to think about it is that when your body is in a state of adversity, like it's not getting enough calories or not getting enough protein or certain amino acids, it'll turn on these defenses, and they will turn on the very proximal downstream, we call it, defenses, like repairing DNA and turning on energy and stopping inflammation. And so that's really what's happening at the molecular level. There's a paper that's coming out shortly that has found a molecule that the body makes itself that's in the gut that can turn on the sirtuin defenses. It works very similar, if not identical, to resveratrol, one of the molecules we discovered back in the early 2000s that you get from plants. You get it from grapes and can get it in red wine or supplements. But somebody that's going to publish soon has found that there's a natural molecule that we make ourselves that turns on sirtuin. So that's also something that happens when we're hungry, which is an exciting new development coming out.
And you can measure what is happening on your DNA with the epigenetic clock. And there are so many people who are now buying them in internet. Is it really useful to use them? And there are so many. What can you tell our readers?
Yes, I would say they're useful to see progress over long periods of time, over 6 months to a year. And they can be used as guides for clinical trials to see if aging is affected. But you can't easily compare one test to another. They're all quite different, as you alluded to. We developed one in my lab that's a cheek swab test that you can get, at least in the US. And there's lots of others. There's blood tests as well. There isn't one test that's better than all of them. There's Dunedin Pace, there's Tally Health, there's TrueAge. There's a few, and there's others, of course, in Europe. But I would say that you could pick one and stick with it for a year or so and have a look how you're doing. There's going to be some noise, right? Because even if you run the same test twice, you'll get a slightly different answer, 5-10% variability. But it's the long-term changes that you want to see. And so I've been doing similar tests, not DNA methylation, but blood tests for biomarkers with a company called InnerAge. Actually, the company's called Inside Tracker, but the test is called InnerAge. I've been doing that for probably 14 years now. And, one test to another is not as revealing as looking at it over years to see if, am I going in the right direction? Is it negative or is it positive? And so that's where we're at. I wouldn't say we're at the point where doctors could diagnose something with one of these tests yet. It's like early AI. It's going to be useful, but we're still working on it.
And you are also personally measuring in daily life, which with tools like wearables. How do you use them?
Well, when I'm home, I stand on scales that measure my weight, of course, but also my body fat, visceral fat, and I look at the graphs that end up on my phone. So I'm making sure that my body is in good shape and I'm not losing muscle mass, right? And I'm trying to gain it. I'm trying to limit my visceral fat. I'm trying to increase my pulse wave velocity so that I can have better blood flow. That's my feet. Then my hands are holding onto a little bar as well that measures that. On my wrist, I have a watch that measures my heart rate variability and all the other good things. Just general heart rate. I do ECGs. And sleep is a big one. So I've got a ring, I've got the watch that both tell me my sleep. And I try to get not just a certain amount of sleep. It's important to look at the depth of sleep. And I try to get, what would it be? At least 10% deep sleep a night and extra REM sleep. So last night I had a very good sleep. I got, what did I get? About 6 hours. So that's typical for me because I was traveling, I was flying, had to get up early to talk to you. But in that 6 hours, there was a lot of deep sleep and REM sleep, which makes me, I wake up in the morning feeling good. I know that I've had good sleep, in part because I know I've been dreaming, but also my watch tells me that. So, I'm monitoring myself like anyone actually can. I'm not doing anything that an average person couldn't do. I've tried devices that are not yet out there that are really interesting. I'm excited about patches that can measure your body 1,000 times a second on your chest. And a friend of mine is making those already for hospitals to send patients home early. But what he's seeing is that these patches can stay on there for weeks. They're disposable, and you can actually measure things like diseases. He can see when you're about to get a viral infection versus bacterial. He can see if you're getting depressed. He can see if what else was he detecting? He could even see neurological disorders based on movement. And so that's the future. I wrote about this in Lifespan, and it's all coming true, which is really exciting. And I think one day it would be crazy not to have one of these devices on you, especially when you're older, because it's going to know before you know that you're getting sick. And to that point, I want to say, I truly believe that with today's technology, even today, but certainly in a few years, you can avoid, unless you're extremely unlucky, avoid heart disease, cancer, and dementia by catching these diseases very early and changing your lifestyle, supplements, food, medicines. And of course, if it's cancer, you can kill it early before it even would show up with symptoms. And that's part of the problem with today's medicine, is that we typically wait until we get sick before we go to a doctor. And we have to get rid of that mentality. If we're already sick, then we've waited too long.
But when we read out all the informations from our wearables every day, how can we work out what's the best to do for us? We have to make a plan, and there will be a new ring which is connected to a platform, which helps a lot, I guess.
Well, that's what we need, because right now it's all on different devices, and it doesn't really give you a sense of being your guardian angel. It's just information. But what we need is a system that brings it all together and feels like your AI buddy that not just shows you the data, but then uses that to give you great advice within your home, right? Including not just food, but how to work out as well. And even to change the environment of your hotel room or your house to your personal preferences and what your body needs that day.
Mm-hmm. There are even more ways in which we can stay healthy for longer. Many people are interested in dietary supplements. There is NMN, from which the vital energy substance NAD+ is produced in the body. You are currently developing your own food supplement for this, an NAD booster. What can you tell us?
Well, it's not a supplement, it's a drug.
Okay.
And so about 10 years ago, I had to make the decision because I'd made a discovery. I formed a company, and the question for the company was, do we put it on the market and be the first NMN in the world and just have people take it and hope that it works? Or do we make it very pure and make even better versions of it and test it in clinical trials? So we chose to do the second path. And 10 years later, without making any money, in fact, I've put millions of dollars of my own money into this program, and 5 clinical trials that are either finished or in progress. I'm still at it. Right now, other people are making, I hear about a total of $2.5 billion a year out of NMN globally. I'm not making any money off that, by the way. Often people think I am, but I want to make sure that people know I'm not selling supplements. But I do hope to make a medicine that is better than anything you can get online. It's going to be, if it works, proven to work, and it'll be very pure. So you know that what you're buying is what you're getting. And so that's where I'm at. And actually, excitingly, there is a new molecule that the team at Metro Biotech, which is the company here in Massachusetts, they are going to test this in humans hopefully by the end of this year. It's very close. And that molecule should be a super NAD booster that is drug-like, it's pure, it's stable. You don't have to keep it in the fridge for it to last a long time. And we hope that it can treat diseases. We're going to try it possibly against kidney diseases and brain aging, so dementia, perhaps some muscle wasting. So this is the kind of thing that I'm working on. Occasionally I do some consumer goods, but usually there's too much hype and too much marketing for my liking. But I got to say, I do get frustrated with how slow it is to make a product for people. 10 years with 200,000 people dying every day from aging-related diseases has been frustrating. But I do hope that within my lifetime, I will have succeeded in making something that can be proven to work for diseases based on my research.
And this molecule, is it one which we have in the body, or it's a totally new one?
Well, Metro Biotech has been doing clinical trials on a non-natural NMN. So NMN can be crystallized and purified in a way that's very stable and bioavailable, that's not natural. So yeah, I'm working on the non-natural, and seemingly what's sold on the internet is the natural form, which is not as stable or as active as I mentioned. But yeah, the new one that's going into clinical trials that I just talked about is a synthetic variant that doesn't get digested as easily in the body. So the levels get really high and it lasts longer. So instead of taking gram amounts, you can take a little pill and it should be even more effective than anything you can currently get.
And here in Europe, many people take NR because NMN is currently not allowed to be sold in Europe. Why are you working on NMN and not on NR?
Well, we work on NR as well in my lab. I like both molecules. I'm not selling anything, right? So I'm not biased that way. And some of the drugs that we're trying to develop are based on NR as well. Why do I take NMN, as you might ask, is probably a better question. I take NMN because it raised NAD levels higher than NR in the clinical trials that I had seen. And that was the first reason to take it. But I think both molecules can raise NAD, and I've seen some promising clinical trial data for both. So yeah, I don't have a true favorite, actually.
And on your former favorite compound, resveratrol, you are now again with? Is it true?
I'm now again with?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Yeah, because there are new insights.
Well, I haven't stopped taking resveratrol for the last 15 years, maybe longer. I started taking it in 2005, so it's 20, almost 20. So I still like it. My cardiovascular system is very clean, so it's obviously not hurting. If you look at the scientific literature, there have been dozens of clinical trials, and some work and some don't. And what I put that down to is when I look at the actual papers in detail, if you don't solubilize resveratrol, if you don't give it with food or yogurt or something oily, it really doesn't get absorbed well. And I've been saying this for over 10 years, that you need to take resveratrol with something that will help it get absorbed. Because resveratrol, if you put it into water, it'll just sink to the bottom of the glass. It's totally insoluble. And so if you eat it without anything else but water, it'll just mostly pass straight through you. A little bit will get digested and absorbed with bile. but you get about 5 times more if you mix it with something oily or fatty, or even just a yogurt. And I think that that's the issue is when scientists look at the literature, they say, oh, it works, but it doesn't work, and it works, doesn't work. It comes down to how you give it to the patients. And I've seen a lot of positive results with resveratrol, blood glucose levels, cholesterol, cardiovascular disease, protection from organ failure. So I'm still very positive about resveratrol's benefits long term. But again, it's not a very potent molecule, so it takes years for the benefits to be seen, I think.
Here in Europe, they like the liposomized or micellized resveratrol. But okay, let's talk about medical drugs like rapamycin. You took it or take it, an immune suppressor that is given during organ transplants. You have tested it, huh? Your experience?
Well, you mean rapamycin or metformin?
Rapamycin.
So rapamycin I've taken on and off. I try pretty much everything once at least, just because if I'm going to talk about it, I feel like I should have some experience with it. I don't take it constantly. I've got some concerns about it. It is an immune suppressor. I am concerned that it might allow viruses to grow in the body or be reactivated. So I take it occasionally, typically when I'm feeling very healthy and I'm not, exposed to viruses in the winter. I haven't seen a big difference other than my blood glucose levels went up a bit, which is not what you want. That's a typical side effect. But, I've taken it just to see if I could tolerate it, to see if it had any benefits. I didn't see any immediate benefits, and I think that that's to be expected. If you fast, you don't expect to suddenly get younger. And that's, it's a fasting mimicking drug. So, I think rapamycin probably has long-term health benefits, but you have to be very careful with it because it's a very strong immunosuppressant. And even at low doses, there might be some long-term negative effects that haven't been shown yet. But I think, do it with a doctor that is experienced, and if you're very healthy, then it should be fine. I'm aware of people who are over 105 that have been taking it, and they seem to be doing pretty well. Again, that's not a clinical trial, that's just a story. But, I hear enough stories to say it might be worth talking to your doctor about if they're experienced.
And metformin, we have to mention, which is normally prescribed for diabetes. What's your experience with this?
Again, I've taken metformin on and off. I experiment. I see if it works, if it doesn't, if I see anything. I prefer to take berberine, which is the natural equivalent, partly because my stomach doesn't feel sick with it. Metformin can be rough. I feel a bit like I get indigestion and heartburn with too much metformin. So, if you take slow release, it seems to be, for me, better. But, they're both very similar. They inhibit complex 1 with the electron transport chain. They rev up mitochondria. They promote more mitochondria. And there's even evidence that metformin can reverse slightly the DNA methylation clock, a paper that just came out that I tweeted about. So I think metformin is really interesting. It's very safe compared to most drugs. And my father has been taking metformin for, probably 20 years now. And he's doing really well on it. My family tends to have high blood sugar as well. So for people like us, it makes a lot of sense to start early on metformin before you get type 2 diabetes. But, I think if someone is young, in their 30s and 40s, and has great metabolism and doesn't have high blood sugar levels or HbA1c, which is a surrogate marker for glucose, then probably it's not necessary to start. But, at my age with a genetic susceptibility, it's definitely worth taking the risk because the downsides are pretty low.
A promising longevity drug, GLP-1 agonist, the weight loss injection. What hopes are connected with it regarding healthy longevity?
Well, It's as The Economist put on their cover, it's almost miraculous what we're finding, the field is finding with these drugs. Of course, they were developed as weight loss drugs originally, but now with a lot of study and a lot of money being put into these studies, we're seeing protection against other diseases, lower inflammation, even Alzheimer's disease is protected by these drugs on average. So yeah, it's as close to miraculous as we've seen, any drug actually. And part of it can be attributed to the weight loss and the improved metabolism, lower blood sugar, but not all of it. There seem to be other side effects that are also beneficial. So, I've talked to other doctors, physicians who say they were skeptical at first. They thought it was a lifestyle medicine. People should just learn to eat better. But they've been convinced by the effects that they've seen on their patients, how much improvement they've seen in their overall health, not just their weight loss. The biggest side effect, though, is muscle loss, and you have to be very careful. And so if you do lose weight rapidly, you have to change your lifestyle. You have to eat well, and you have to exercise more to maintain your muscle mass. And so at least do some sit-ups and push-ups and planks to make sure the large muscles in your bodies don't get smaller, because that's anti-age, that's pro-aging when you lose muscle, right? If you lose muscle, you can have lower testosterone, and even worse, you can even break your bones if you're older, and that's a very quick way to potentially death. A lot of older people die from falls. My grandmother died. I think everybody in their family or their friends has known somebody who's fallen and broken a bone in old age. And then it's often, if you're over 80, and certainly if you're over 90, it's a very slow path to recovery, if ever.
And finally, what you just mentioned, we have to talk about the epigenetic reprogramming, a highly complex procedure. You and your Harvard team have used this procedure to restore sight to blind monkeys. Now you want to test it on humans, and you are also working on a cocktail, a drink with special active ingredients that should work in the same way, but it's much easier to use. What could this cocktail achieve for our healthy longevity in the best case scenario?
Wow. Okay, so just a bit of background. What I wrote about in my book and on my podcast, Lifespan, is coming true. I predicted a future where we could control aging, not just forwards for scientific reasons, but backwards. I wrote, if you can give something, you can take it away. And so it's called epigenetic reprogramming. And what we use in the field is either 4 genes or 3 genes. We prefer 3 genes. They're called Yamanaka genes, named after the scientist Shinya Yamanaka, who won the Nobel Prize a little while ago for showing that these 4 genes can make stem cells out of adult cells. And we don't want to make stem cells. That would cause cancer. But what we want to do is to use this technology to rejuvenate cells and give them back their identity. In fact, it's the opposite of what Professor Yamanaka did. We want cells to get their identity. He was trying to make cells lose their identity. Stem cells don't have an identity. And so what we figured out was using 3 of those genes called OCT4, SOX2, and KLF4, or OSK. If we give cells just those 3, it's very safe. And as you mentioned, we see remarkable benefits in animals. We cured blindness in mice in 2020 in a Nature paper. And Life Biosciences, which is the company that is doing the clinical trials or hoping to do the clinical trials, they recently tested monkeys that had blindness, and they had improved visual function. They don't say cured blindness because it's very hard to prove that the monkeys could see again. In a mouse, it's pretty easy, but in a monkey, they showed electrical activity that was consistent with improved visual function. And they just published or released a press release that showed they could repeat that work that they did a year ago. And so it's full steam ahead to human clinical trials by next year, if all goes well. And that method, that is the first drug, which is, what is it called? ER100. So that's the drug's name right now. It's a virus that you a domesticated virus that you put in the eye. Takes 1 second to put it in the eye with a very, very small needle, and it infects the retina. And you can turn on these 3 Yamanaka genes with doxycycline, just an antibiotic. And so the idea would be that you get this quick injection. By the way, it sounds bad to have an injection in the eye, but first of all, you don't feel it. Second of all, anyone with macular degeneration is familiar with injections. And so it's not a big deal. And certainly if it's going to cure your blindness, it's the least harmful thing you can do. And the idea will be that we'll turn on these 3 genes either in people that have suddenly lost their vision due to blood flow loss, or glaucoma, which is a slow progressive typically pressure-induced loss of vision. And over the next month to 6 months, we'll see if people get their vision back. And I'm excited that it might really work, because it worked in monkeys, and monkeys' eyes are very similar to ours. So that's where we're at. And you mentioned the chemicals. I want to make this treatment available to everybody, and not just for the eye, but every tissue system: the skin, the liver, the kidneys, the skin, the hair. And imagine a world where you could just take a pill or take a drink, and then in a matter of a month, you could be rejuvenated and your organs get younger. And now your immune system can fight cancer, and you don't die from an infection when you're 80. These are the kind of futures that I think are really possible now. And my lab at Harvard has been working for 5 years now to find cheaper ways to treat aging and reprogram cells. And we have now published chemical cocktails that work on human cells to reverse aging. And we're testing these in mice now to see what happens. And we're actually down to a single molecule that we've synthesized that's not natural, but it has natural activities that could either be a drug, or could even be a drink, or it could be a pill. We'll see. It's in the development process. So we hope that in the next couple of years, there'll be something that might be available to everybody that could reverse their aging if all goes well.
Mamma mia, cross the fingers. You will write, this will be a topic in your next book. You are writing your next book, right? After the great success of your first book, Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to Do. We have 2. I'm sure that everybody loves to know what your second book will be about. Can you give us a little hint?
Yeah. So the first draft is written. I'm writing it with Matt LaPlante again, my muse, and he and I have the first draft. So I need to get finished on the draft. The problem is, by the way, is that the field is moving so fast. I'm adding new things all the time that are coming to my mind. It's super exciting, but I'm hoping it'll come out next year. It'll be Lifespan Part 2. And Lifespan Part 1 was the textbook of aging. If you read Lifespan, you really understand what it is about aging that we can tackle, and why we should tackle it, and what are the implications for you, your family, and society. Lifespan, the second book, is the guidebook. What is it that society has made that makes us so sick? What is it that we think we're doing that's healthy, but that's not actually healthy? And what's the science-based way to live longer, and hopefully make it into the next century with the technology that's here now and what's coming very shortly. And I'm excited because every prediction that was in Lifespan came true. Unfortunately, I also predicted a pandemic, and 2 months later we had one. So, we'll see. But I'm excited about the predictions that I'm making in Part 2 that are greater in expanse, and at different ages. I'm even going to talk about how to raise children so that they can live longer later in life. Mm-hmm. And so that's what Lifespan Part 2 is. It's also understanding what makes us human, what makes us individuals, and how to measure those differences and tailor your lifestyle and your supplements and your medicines so that you personally can benefit maximally.
Hmm, we are waiting. We are waiting. So, writing a book among all the other projects, let's return to our challenge of chronic stress. Would you like to tell me your favorite mental exercise for inner strength and inner peace?
Oh, yeah. Well, for me, it was changing my attitude. I was so worried about time. I Since I was 4 years old, I was worried about time. Time is running out. I don't have enough time. I'm not successful enough. I haven't had enough impact. And that's obviously what got me into Harvard and where I am. I was driven, but it wasn't sustainable. It wasn't healthy, and so I've learned to not worry about time so much and cherish time. And so I spend more peaceful time. I take breaks during the day. I close my eyes. I breathe. I have gratitude. I think about the things that I would miss if I didn't have them. My father would be a good example. I, I, I call my father almost every day. We talk for a long time about life, and I'm going to miss him greatly. And so I'm less about personal achievement, more about personal growth now, and that helps me be less stressed. I'm still doing a lot, right? I've got podcast, book, companies, lab, uh, but I hire really good people now. I work with great people, and they can do the things that I am not as good at. Um, and so I've got more time for other things in life, and that's the way to exist. I think is certainly be driven in your 20s and 30s. That's okay, but also try to be more stoic. Right, read Stoic philosophy and understand that there's not a lot of productivity worrying about things that you cannot change. That's a really good way to live life, and then prioritize family and friends first. Um, if someone calls me and it's my partner or my children, I guess unless I'm on a podcast, but perhaps sometimes even if I am, I will pick up the phone. They are number one. Um, Work for me used to be number one, and that was not the best way to live. I know on my deathbed, I'm not going to worry about how many papers I published. I'm going to want to be surrounded by my family and my friends at that moment, and that's what I'm focusing on. I've limited the number of friends I have. Actually, I used to say that I have hundreds of friends. Now I have maybe 5 that I really trust, and I think part of it's due to becoming more successful. It's harder to have good friends, and I've learned that some of my friends were not really friends. It's been a hard lesson, but I have a closed circle now that I really trust. But it's been tough in my 50s, having to experience betrayal and a lack of trust. I guess we all go through this in life at some point. We realize that we have friends and then we have real friends. And it's something that I wish I'd learned earlier in life.
You are a role model for a holistic way of life. So there is a new ring which is quite finished, and it's measuring comparable to other rings, other wearables, but it's special because it's connected to an app and to protocols. So you can get a plan for your healthy, long life. What's the special topic on that ring?
Well, yeah, this is a company headed by Li Wu, who's been very kind and supportive, and is a real friend. And she's a wonderful person. She's dedicated to improving human health, and so I'm excited about where she's going, which is, and she's been a very successful entrepreneur her whole life, and she's a scientist too, which is very rare to be both those things. And so she's working on integrating a new type of ring into environments, like I talked about earlier. And I think that's the next big thing for wearables and health, is to not to just have to look at your phone and try and understand what these numbers mean, but to have AI to be part of your world and to take care of you without you even having to think about it. Adjusting the light, adjusting the temperature, adjusting your bed, your sleep, your exercise. This is a future that I can't wait to be part of, and I'm very excited about where she's going with this.
And she also is interested in the external surrounding ambiente, what she's with this ring connecting as well. How important is that?
Well, it takes the guesswork out of it. It's very hard to know when to dim the lights or when to exercise optimally. And I'm imagining a world where either at a hotel room that recognizes you or at home, it optimizes the air and the temperature and the light and even the type of food that you would eat. And it knows your weight and it knows your heart rate, not just in general, but in that moment, and can help you. And I struggle with getting enough exercise and a lot of good sleep. And so I think having the wearables guide me through my environment and optimizing that, I think that's the way the world is going to be. And that when that happens, and hopefully it's very soon, we're going to actually look back at just today or even just a few years ago and think, how did we survive? We had to be PhDs in nutrition and PhDs in exercise, which of course we cannot be. So it's going to simplify life and optimize our environment on an individual level, which is what I wrote in my book, is the way the future is going to be.
Last question. The protocols on the app of Virtusun, you are also part of. What are you doing? What are you offering?
Well, the protocols that I've tried are the mindfulness ones. And so it's really helped me with my ability to focus and to be more present in my daily life. And that was where Liwu originally started, was to develop assistance for companies and individuals to not just recover from stress, but to try to be more mindful during the day and be more productive as a result. And it's grown from there. And I'm really excited about where she's going with this, because if you start with the mind, that's the best place. And then you connect that to the rest of the body and then the environment. And then you can be like a guardian angel for us. And so, while I'm working on the not supplements, but working on medicines and science that is going to alter us from the inside, she's working on how to make the environment, the outside, optimal as well.
And the company is Swiss-based, we are proud of. So, David, thank you so much. It was not only a pleasure, it was full of insights for everybody who will read this paper of Sonntagsblick, but also our podcast will be, I guess, explode. Thank you very, 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 very much for the whole time. Thank you. That's perfect. Danke fürs Zuhören. Ich hoffe, diese Folge hat dir gefallen. Und weitere Informationen findest du ja wie immer in den Shownotes. Wenn du etwas in dieser Folge gelernt hast und diesen Podcast unterstützen möchtest, würde ich mich über eine Bewertung riesig freuen. Damit hilfst du natürlich mir und anderen Zuhörern, dass dieser Podcast leichter gefunden wird. Besuch mich bitte auch auf meinen anderen Kanälen bei Instagram, TikTok, Facebook oder YouTube. Und ich würde mich über ein Feedback und weitere Fragen von dir wirklich sehr, sehr freuen.